What's up, everybody? It's waba, and I just wanted to give you a quick update on my Occultist Caustic Arrow build and how it's been going, and where I plan on going from here. So first things first, my mapping, I'm level 80 and mapping's going about as expected. The boss fights, they're a little bit longer, but not too much longer. I think the only thing that really makes it to where the longer boss fights don't bother me is that the playstyle is incredibly smooth and I really enjoy it, when you're clearing the map. So I'll take that playstyle for the slightly longer boss fights. It's kind of a trade-off. The only kind of issue that I'm kind of having, other than the longer boss fights, is I have minor mana issues, and that could be combated with a few things. Some mana regen on gear, which could be a little hard to prioritize that stat, especially in this meta right now, because mana regen is probably pretty valuable, so it makes it a little more expensive than it has been in the past. But also just getting levels and getting more maximum mana really helps this. This is also why nodes like Deep Wisdom over by Cruel Preparation right above the Witch starting area is pretty strong, because not only does it give you the chaos damage from the unique Jewel Eldritch Battery, but it also gives you a fair amount of mana and some mana regen. Now, the one thing I kind of want to point out is the changes to Energy Shield and Life push going CI further out than it has in the past, because as a lot of you veteran players will know, that CI and Energy Shield in general really got gutted pretty hard. It was eviscerated by GGG, to put it mildly. So, and then Life got some buffs with the addition of some new prefixes that you can get on pieces of gear, and I think we have higher rolls, higher potential rolls for Life. So CI, or not CI, but Energy Shield and Life are a lot closer than they ever were, and because of this really makes playing a hybrid ES Life build like much more comparable and really a true alternative to CI. Because even when I'm like looking at my build in Path of Building, I'm only getting to about 7,500 to 8,000 Energy Shield as an Occultist. Of course, I'm not really maxing out all my gear. This is just kind of pretty standard gear, and that's still pretty high. But if I could get 7,000 life, or I could get 7,000 total life or effective health pool as a hybrid build, I have much less of an incentive to go CI. The only thing CI really does for me at that point is it gives me the ability to be immune to chaos damage. But that's not as big of a deal, because while you're immune to chaos damage, then you lose instant healing with flasks. That's a big deal. And another little side note to this, which I find pretty interesting, and I didn't really think about this at first, but now with the fact that volatiles have changed, how volatiles, they don't just explode in your face instantly. A little orb, like pops up, follows you, and then once you make contact with it, there's like a little timer, a little fuse, and it goes off afterwards. They are so much better and more enjoyable to play around now that I don't feel like I really need 10,000 health just to survive that volatile that I know will kill me. The funny fact about this is actually the last time I played Caustic Arrow, or Poison Arrow, because that was the last time I played it, I was playing a Scion Poison Arrow build. I can't remember what patch it was, but essentially what killed me was a volatile, because I had a Calum's Heart, I had about 7,500 health, and I put a Poison Arrow through a door, a volatile mob ran through the doorway, ran through the cloud, and died right when it got up to me, and I didn't even see it, and that's how I died. So it's kind of a little interesting how this change to volatiles takes away a lot of that stress that we had before for as high of a life pool as possible. But back to what I was saying, now that they're much closer, Energy Shield and Life builds, there's some incentive to actually being a hybrid build versus CI. And I honestly think CI could potentially use one of its nodes behind CI again, but that's for another video. So with me saying that hybrid is actually something to consider now, an item that I am thinking about using is the unique chess piece Cosprey's Will. Now, Cosprey's Will gives you an additional curse on enemies, and it makes it to where hexproof enemies are unable to be hexproof, or you're able to curse a hexproof enemy. This does not work on bosses that are immune to it, as far as I know, but it's a pretty nice thing while you're mapping, in my opinion, especially when you have breaches or essence mobs or anything, because that's one of the things that does suck about investing heavily into curses, and then to have a mob that's hexproof, and then you can't really, you for Caustic Arrow, you'd lose a lot of your damage and potentially a lot of your defense. But with that said, I am looking at doing a triple curse setup with Cosprey's Will, using Temp Chains, Enfeeble, and then having a Witchfire Brew for my vulnerability. And I don't necessarily know how I'm going to do it. At first, I thought about using a Heretic's Veil, but the thing I don't really like about Heretic's Veil is that it gives you levels on your curses, and it gives you a little bit more radius with the Blasphemy, because Heretic's Veil grants a level 22 Blasphemy in the helm itself for any gems that are socketed in there. But the problem is I like curse effectiveness more, so I would rather have the quality on a Blasphemy gem, and I would rather have the I would just rather have the quality on a Blasphemy gem than that, because that increases the effectiveness of a curse. When if you get a level, or you get a little bit more radius, well, radius is in a pretty good spot now, and the level, it's not as good as just 10% increase effectiveness, which is what you get with a 20 quality Blasphemy. So, Blasphemy is kind of back to feeling so strong now, and that's really pushing me towards using a Cosprey's Will and going for this tri-curse setup. I have to do a couple things with it, but I think it's pretty good. Another thing that I really like about it, because you might think, well, there's no life on a Cosprey's Will chess piece, won't you lose a lot? Well, yes and no. While there's no life on it, it gives you a lot of chaos resist. So as long as you have a decent amount of energy shield, I'm really hoping I could get about 2,500 to 3,000 energy shield with about 4,500 to 5,000 life. If I have that and I have a decent amount of chaos resist, I'm going to be pretty safe to chaos damage overall. And since I'm not going to be eating any volatiles, most likely, that should be plenty enough health, and it's a pretty good chess piece. Not to mention the evasion is pretty good, especially for a bow build. Anytime you could get more evasion, that's better for you. The other thing I actually kind of want to talk about was Poison Arrow then and Caustic Arrow now, and this could apply to 2.0 Poison Arrow. It could apply to Caustic Arrow whenever that was initially changed, and then it could obviously talk about now. But I think one of the things that people kind of forget about all the updates that we've had with Path of Exile 3.0 is that we have so many more support gems that benefit builds that they kind of forget to even look at them or consider them. Because right now, since we have support gems like Swift Affliction, Efficacy, and they also made it to where you still get the benefit to your cloud DPS from projectile damage, you don't necessarily have to use an Empower. You don't have to have a +3 in power. You don't have to have a level 3 in power and a +1 bow. In the build that I'm playing right now, I'm actually using a 6-link +2 bow, and I'm using Efficacy in my setup. Is it as much DPS as a proper +3 blow? a +3 bow and an Empower? No. But it does bridge the gap in between a +5 2-link bow and then a +3 6-link bow, because obviously that really takes time. And so you know, you really kind of should think about that, especially if you are on the fence about trying this build and you're watching it, and you are on the fence simply because you've played it before. You know, and you're just thinking, well, it's just not the same, and you know, the damage is so lacking. I actually think the damage is pretty good while you're leveling. Again, boss fights are a little bit slower, but doing everything else is perfectly fine. And then the other thing I kind of want to talk about with the then and now is, since before it was a ranger specific build, while now Caustic Arrow is going to be primarily either I think Witch would be number 1, followed by Trickster. So you would have a Cultist, Trickster, or an Ascendant. Some people think you could do stuff with Ranger, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But you're going to have much less accuracy on a Caustic Arrow build now, because you're not going to have nearly as much dexterity. And you might think accuracy doesn't really matter, but if you're really utilizing Pierce, or if you're playing the way that I play Caustic Arrow, which I have a little bit of a bias in thinking that the way I'm playing it is the best way to play it, you're gonna need some accuracy. So, you know, you actually can fire that arrow, and then it will actually hit that first target and pierce. Because there are quite a bit of times where I notice that I will fire an arrow into a pack, and it won't hit the target. It will hit the target like kind of at the end of the pack, and then the AoE isn't large enough to cover the entire pack, especially since those mobs are already running at me. So, you know, that's something that you kind of have to be a little conscious of now. It might even be worth, you know, buying some gear with some accuracy, some flat accuracy in its suffixes. Obviously not too much. I would probably shoot for about 85%, but I know right now I'm at about roughly a 77% hit chance, and you could tell, and it's definitely something to think about. The other thing too is, I think as it stands now, it is not a very good beginner starting build, especially in hardcore. If you don't go about getting the right gear, if you really don't have a lot of experience doing this build, you could be pretty squishy while leveling. And if you don't invest into the right weapons, you know, getting a silver branch, getting a 5-link with a +1, getting a 5-link with a +2, or, you know, in my case, I just went for a 6-link +2 because you could do that with essence crafting, and you can guarantee it now, and you could get a 6-link bow pretty cheap. But if you don't do any of that, not only can you be, you know, a little squishy while leveling, but you can have some pretty lackluster damage. So, you know, just keep that in mind if you're thinking about this build. Now, like I said, if you're more experienced with Caustic Arrow or Poison Arrow, you know, maybe you've played that before, or you're just a really experienced Path of Exile player, you could definitely deal with these things, but it's just something that you're going to have to keep in mind. And on the leveling, how it handled all the 3.0 content, it did pretty well. I didn't have any trouble really with any of the fights all the way until Act 10 Kitava. And I was doing this on a standard character. You know, while I was leveling, I was kind of leveling 2 characters side by side, which is why it took me considerably more time to get my character to maps in the hardcore league for Harbinger. But when I got to Act 10 Kitava, I may have been a little bit squishier than I should have been. However, there's some really punishing mechanics as of right now in the Kitava fight. Mostly the mechanic where Kitava puts fire all over the entire platform, and there's only a sliver for you to avoid it. And then also in the very last phase of the Kitava fight, the ads hit incredibly hard, and I believe they have some sort of slow or hinder effect on them. So it's a lot harder for you to get away from them. So because of that, when I did this on standard, I actually did not do it without dying a single time. I think I may have, but it was too close for me to feel comfortable doing it, so I just got a boss kill. Like, I just had a friend of mine kill Act 10 Kitava. I don't really think there's anything wrong with that, but it's something that I want, you know, people to kind of keep in mind, especially if they are doing this in hardcore, because it could already be a struggle leveling this build. But to get to that, and the way that Path of Exile is changed to where you have to kill Kitava before you do maps, you should just get a boss kill. Like, just get a boss kill. There's no shame in it. You know, just have someone who's higher level, who, because Caustic Arrow is not a build that is really, really strong while leveling. So other builds are going to be able to do Kitava just fine. This can be a little tricky, you know, because you're going to be leveling as hybrid, and once you lose your energy shield, you're taking a lot of damage. Then all of a sudden your effective health pool is lower, etc., etc. I could go on about this, but I just wanted to forewarn you guys. Act 10 Kitava can be a punishing encounter for this build, and I would try to avoid it if you are in hardcore. You could do it just fine if you're not hardcore. You're just gonna die, you know, once or twice, or maybe you won't. But the risk is just too high for a hardcore player for this build. So yeah, I just wanted to give you that update on the Caustic Arrow build, and you know, hopefully it wasn't too all over the place. Hopefully it gives you guys some insights on some things. And I do have a forum guide for it now, and I will be making a guide for it pretty soon. I just want to get some more damage, and I really want to see if I'm gonna do the Tri-Curse hybrid style instead of CI. And I actually really like the Tri-Curse hybrid idea, because like I said, I think I could get as much life, or I could get as much effective health pool with that as going CI. So yeah. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. And yeah, subscribe if you like. I would say that come check me out on my stream, but honestly, as it turns out, I'm just going to be focusing a lot more on YouTube at this point, because, you know, I spend time streaming and then I don't really have any viewers. But you know, whenever I make a YouTube video, you guys come through and you leave me comments, and I would rather make content for the people who are engaging with me than just streaming by myself like an idiot. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching. See you later.